Mr. Miller, I know what happened to your daughter's mother, and if you want the truth, you'll come to my house. Tonight. The call ended before Jack could speak. He sat in his truck with $28 in his bank account, a sleeping daughter upstairs, and a stranger's voice still ringing in his ear, like something had just cracked open inside a wall he didn't know existed. His hands were shaking. Not from the cold. From the specific terror of a father who suddenly understands that someone out there knows something about his child that he doesn't. He started the engine. What choice did he have? If this story already has you, subscribe right now and drop your city in the comments. I want to see exactly how far this reaches. Jack Miller picked up on the second ring because he never slept deeply anymore. That was the thing nobody told you about raising a child alone. Your sleep changed permanently. It became something shallow and alert. One ear always angled toward the hallway. One part of your brain always running a quiet background check. Is she breathing? Is she warm? Is she okay? 7 years of that. And you stopped being a man who slept and became a man who waited in the dark until morning made it official. So when the phone rang at 11:47 on a Tuesday in November, Jack was already half sitting up before the second vibration finished. Unknown number. Chicago area code. He answered. Mr. Miller. A woman's voice. Precise. Controlled in the way that things are controlled when considerable effort is being applied to the controlling. I know what happened to your daughter's mother, and if you want the truth, you'll come to my house. Tonight. The line went dead. Jack sat in the dark and did not move for 4 full seconds. Then he called back. It rang once and went to a voicemail that said only, "You've reached Claire Whitman. Leave a message." Professional. Impersonal. The voice of a woman who had learned to give nothing away in even the smallest interaction. He did not leave a message. He sat on the edge of his bed and put both feet flat on the floor, the cold of the hardwood. The specific reality of it. And he breathed. In through the nose, out through the mouth, the way the school counselor had taught Lily to calm herself down, and which Jack had quietly stolen for his own use without ever admitting it. She knows what happened to Rachel. Rachel, who had walked out of this apartment 7 years ago when Lily was 4 months old and had not come back. Rachel, whose last known address was in Cincinnati, whose phone number stopped working 3 years ago, whose mother had called Jack once, just once, to say Rachel was figuring things out, and that Jack should be patient, and then that number stopped working too. Rachel, whose absence Jack had explained to Lily in careful installments over 7 years, each explanation slightly more honest than the last. Each one a little more of the truth and a little less of the story he'd constructed to keep a child's heart from breaking all at once. Your mama got lost. Your mama is far away. Your mama loves you, but she couldn't stay. And last year, when Lily was 6 and had looked at him with those direct dark eyes and asked, but why couldn't she stay? Dad. He had run out of careful installments and simply said, I don't fully know, Bug. I'm sorry. And Lily had nodded like she'd expected that answer and went back to her drawing, and Jack had gone to the bathroom and stood at the sink for 3 minutes doing nothing. I know what happened to your daughter's mother. He called the number again. This time it picked up on the first ring. Mr. Miller, Claire Whitman said. I wasn't sure you'd call back. What do you know about Rachel? His voice came out steadier than he felt. He was grateful for that. A pause, short-measured. Not over the phone. Lady, if you think I'm driving somewhere in the middle of the night because a stranger tells me, I'm sending you an address, she said. Kenilworth. The gate will be open. I have a chandelier that needs emergency repair, and I'll pay your emergency rate plus 40%. Another pause, slightly longer. The other thing, the thing about the mother, that's separate. That's why you'll actually come. The call ended again. Jack sat there holding his phone, his heart doing something loud and irregular in his chest, and he thought, this is insane. I'm not going. This is exactly the kind of thing that turns into a true crime podcast. His phone buzzed. A Venmo notification. A deposit his emergency rate already sent before he'd agreed to anything. He looked at his bank balance. looked at the hallway, looked at Lily's door, which was cracked the way he always left it, so the nightlight in her room threw a thin stripe of gold across the hall floor. He texted his neighbor. "Mrs. Petrova, emergency job came in. Could you listen for Lily?" The reply came in 20 seconds. "Go. My door's unlocked." He grabbed his bag. The drive north was 23 minutes on empty roads, rain coming in sideways off the lake, the windshield wipers doing that rhythm that's almost hypnotic when you're tired and scared and trying not to be either. Jack drove and did not think about Rachel. He thought about the job, the chandelier, the load-bearing capacity of a fatigue-stressed mounting wire. He thought about practical things, because practical things were the only things he knew how to fix. He was good at fixing things. He was considerably less good at the things that couldn't be fixed with tools. The gate to the Whitman property was open the way she'd promised. The house at the end of the driveway was the kind of house that registered as enormous before your brain finished processing the individual details. Columns, windows, a front entrance lit by exterior lights that were doing the architectural equivalent of announcing themselves. He parked. He sat for a moment. Get in, fix the chandelier, find out what she knows, get home before Lily wakes up. Simple. The door opened before he knocked. Claire Whitman was not what he'd built in his head on the drive over. He'd expected someone soft with money, the kind of person who'd never once had a problem that couldn't be resolved with a phone call. What he got instead was a woman in her mid-40s who stood very straight and very still, wearing clothes that cost more than his truck payment, with eyes that were watching him the way people watch things when they're deciding whether the thing is safe. Her hands, he noticed, were trembling. Just slightly. Just enough. "Mr. Miller," she said. "Jack," he said. "Where's the chandelier?" She took him to the foyer, and he saw it immediately. A 200-pound fixture, hanging at a 40-degree angle. 2 of its 4 mounting wires sheared the remaining 2, holding with the specific tautness that made experienced electricians stop breathing for a second. Fresh plaster cracks radiated from the ceiling medallion like something had reached up through the floor above and grabbed it. "How long has it been like this?" Jack asked, already moving. 2 hours and 40 minutes, she said. "I've been sitting here." He looked at her. "Alone." The guests left. "You've been sitting here alone for 2 hours and 40 minutes under a chandelier that could come down." "It's not going to come down," she said with the certainty of someone who had already calculated it. "You don't know that." "I climbed the ladder and checked," she said. He stopped. "You climbed the ladder." It seemed like the thing to do. He looked at her for one more second. This woman who sat alone under broken things and climbed ladders in silk and sent money before getting an agreement. And then he put his bag down and got to work. The fix took 40 minutes. The mount was solid, which was lucky. The wires were old, original to a 90s renovation, and had fatigued at the connection points. The way old hardware fatigues when nobody's thought to look at it in a decade. He replaced the connections, tested the load, came down from the ladder, and stood in the foyer while the chandelier blazed on above them, throwing light in every direction. Claire looked up at it, and Jack watched her face change. It was subtle, the kind of change you'd miss if you were watching the chandelier instead of the person watching the chandelier. Something that was tight in her jaw and her shoulders went fractionally less tight. Like one specific thing out of many broken things had been restored. "Thank you," she said. "The wiring throughout this wing is probably similarly aged," Jack said. "You should have a full assessment." "I know," she said. "Will you come back?" "That depends," he said. Her eyes moved to his face. "On what you tell me," he said. "About Rachel." The foyer went quiet. The chandelier above them was bright and steady and completely restored, and the rest of the house in every direction was dark. Claire Whitman crossed her arms. Not defensively, he thought, but the way someone crosses their arms when they're trying to hold something in, and she said, "Not tonight. Come back Thursday. I'll tell you everything I know." "You'll tell me now," Jack said. Quiet but final. She looked at him. Another of those looks that was actually a decision being made. What I know, she said slowly, is not a small thing. And it involves people who are still alive and still have influence. And if I tell you in the wrong order at the wrong time, you will go do something that will hurt you and your daughter. So no, not tonight. She paused. I am asking you to trust me. You're a stranger who called me at midnight and said you have information about my child's missing mother, Jack said. Why would I trust you? Because I sent you the money before you agreed to come, she said. Because I could have told you anything on the phone and I didn't. And because if I wanted to manipulate you, Mr. Miller, I wouldn't have started with the truth. The silence held. Jack's jaw was tight. Everything in him wanted to push, to demand, to not leave this house without the thing he came for. That was how he was built. That was how you survived when you didn't have backup. But she was right, and he knew she was right, and knowing it made him angrier. Thursday, he said. 9 o'clock, she said. He picked up his bag. He walked to the door. He had his hand on the handle when he stopped, not because he planned to, just because something snagged him. Something he'd seen from the corner of his eye during the past 40 minutes that his brain had filed away and was only now surfacing. At the far end of the hallway, a locked door. Old brass key lock. And on the wall beside it, barely visible in the shadow, a large canvas. Dark colors. A figure. Something else he couldn't quite make out. What's at the end of that hall? He asked. He didn't turn around. He heard her pause. A studio, she said. What's in the painting? A longer pause. Thursday, she said. 9 o'clock. I'll show you. He left. He sat in his truck at the end of the driveway for a full minute before he moved. The rain was still coming down. His hands on the wheel were completely steady, which surprised him because inside his chest, something was moving that hadn't moved in years. A specific kind of fear. The kind that's not about danger, but about proximity to something true. Someone knew what happened to Rachel. Someone had been sitting on that information in that enormous silent house, and had chosen tonight to make the call. Why tonight, he thought. Why me? Why now? He didn't have answers. He had Thursday. He drove home. He checked on Lily. She was exactly as he'd left her, on her back arm thrown over her face. Rabbit tucked tight, the nightlight making everything soft and gold. He sat on the edge of her bed in the dark and listened to her breathe. I'm figuring it out, Bug, he whispered. Whatever it is, I'm going to figure it out. She didn't wake up. She just breathed steady, even the breathing of a child who still trusted completely that someone was handling the things she couldn't see. Jack sat there until the trust in that breathing felt like enough to carry him to morning. Then he went to his room, lay down on top of the covers, and stared at the ceiling. He did not sleep. He thought about trembling hands that went still at the exact moment a decision was made. He thought about a chandelier that someone had been sitting under alone for 2 hours and 40 minutes. He thought about a locked door and a painting in the dark, and a woman who said, I'm asking you to trust me. He thought about Rachel 4 months postpartum standing at the door with a bag that wasn't full enough to mean she was really leaving, and how she'd looked at him and said, I can't do this, Jack. And how he'd said, okay. Just okay. Because he hadn't known what else to say, and by the time he thought of what else to say, she was gone. 7 years. And somewhere in a house full of money and silence and unfinished paintings, a woman who had never met him knew something about those 7 years that he didn't. Thursday was 2 days away. He didn't know yet that Thursday would change everything. He didn't know yet about the letter, or the attorney, or the name Daniel Whitman, or what that name connected to. He didn't know yet that the locked studio held 12 canvases, and that one of them, the largest hung facing the wall, showed a woman holding a child's hand that had been scratched into nothing with something sharp and deliberate. He didn't know yet that Lily in 4 days would walk into that studio and ask a question that would break Claire Whitman open at a place she had sealed shut for 2 years. He didn't know any of it yet. All he knew in that dark room was that somewhere a chandelier was burning bright and steady, and everything else in that house was still waiting in the dark. And Thursday was coming whether he was ready or not. Thursday came the way difficult days always come too fast and without warning, even when you've been watching for it. Jack dropped Lily at school at 7:40, drove north on the interstate with his coffee going cold in the cup holder, and told himself the same thing he'd been telling himself for 2 days. This is a job. Go in, do the work, get the information. Come home. Simple. Manageable. The kind of thing a man with a plan could handle. He stopped telling himself that approximately 30 seconds after Claire opened the door. She was different on Thursday. Not dramatically different, she was still composed, still precise, still wearing the kind of clothes that cost money without announcing it, but something in the architecture of her face had shifted. Like she'd spent 2 days deciding something and had finally decided it. "Coffee's ready," she said. "Come in. No good morning, no thank you for coming. Just coffee, and come in the way you talk to someone you've already decided to be honest with." He followed her to the kitchen and sat down and wrapped both hands around the mug and said, "Tell me about Rachel." Claire sat across from him. She put both palms flat on the table, steady, deliberate, and said, "I need you to hear everything before you react. Can you do that?" "Depends on what everything is." "Jack?" He looked at her. "I need you to promise me," she said. "Because some of what I'm going to tell you involves people who have attorneys and resources and the specific kind of power that destroys people who react before they think. So I need you to listen first." The kitchen was quiet. Jack's jaw was tight. He said, "Talk." She talked. It took 20 minutes. She spoke without stopping, without softening, without the kind of careful packaging that people use when they're trying to manage how information lands. She just gave it to him straight, and he understood immediately why she'd made him wait, because even in the controlled sequential version, it was almost too much to hold. Here was what Claire Whitman knew. Her husband Daniel had been a powerful man. Not famous. Daniel had specifically avoided fame, but powerful in the quiet structural way that certain men in certain cities are powerful. He sat on boards. He had relationships with 3 law firms, 2 city commissioners, and a network of private investigators he'd used over the years for what he called information management. Rachel Navarro, Lily's mother, Jack's ex, had tried to come back. Twice. The first time was when Lily was 2 years old. Rachel had gotten clean, gotten stable, gotten a job in a suburb of Columbus, and had contacted a family attorney to ask about her options for reconnecting with her daughter. The attorney, a man named Gareth Cole, who also worked for the Whitman family on property matters, had responded to Rachel's inquiry with a letter. The letter was not threatening. It was worse than threatening. It was precise. It laid out in careful legal language why any attempt to re-enter Lily's life would be destabilizing for the child, potentially actionable as abandonment reversal, and likely to result in a custody evaluation that would not reflect well on Rachel's history. Rachel had retreated. The second time was when Lily was 4. Rachel had tried again, not through an attorney this time, but directly. She had written Jack a letter. An actual letter, handwritten, sent to his address. He never received it. Cole's firm had a contact at a mail forwarding service Jack was using at the time, Claire said. During a period when you were between apartments. The letter was intercepted. Jack had not moved in 3 minutes. "How do you know this?" he said. His voice was very quiet. "Because after Daniel died I found files," Claire said. "He kept records of everything. He was that kind of man. He kept records the way other people keep trophies." She paused. "I found Rachel's name in a file labeled Peripheral Management. I didn't know what it meant at first. It took me 4 months to understand what I was looking at." "Why was Daniel Whitman managing Rachel Navarro?" Jack said. "He didn't know me. He didn't know her." Claire was quiet for a moment. "Because of me," she said. Jack looked at her. "When your outdoor lighting job was recommended to Daniel's associate, the Halverson property, last spring, Daniel ran a background check. It was something he did with anyone who came onto properties in his network. Contractors, vendors, staff." She stopped. "He found Rachel, found the connection, found Lily." She looked at the table. "And then he found me." "What does that mean?" "It means..." Claire said carefully, that Daniel knew I wanted a child. We'd had that conversation for years. He'd refused. And he knew from the background check from whatever his investigator put together that there was a little girl in Chicago being raised alone by her father, whose mother was attempting to re-enter the picture. She stopped again. Daniel did not want complications. He did not want me distracted. And he did not want a woman with rights to a child entering my orbit, because that would have given me a reason to fight him. The kitchen was very, very quiet. Jack stood up from the table. He walked to the window and stood there with his back to her, and both hands in fists at his sides, and breathed. In through the nose, out through the mouth, the way Lily did it, the way he'd stolen from Lily. "So your husband," he said to the window, "your husband had someone intercept a letter from my daughter's mother, to keep Rachel away, to keep Lily's situation clean, so that if you ever met us." "He was positioning things," Claire said. "Yes, that's what he did. He positioned things, people, outcomes. He was very good at it." "And Rachel?" Jack turned around. "What happened to Rachel?" Claire's face did something complicated. "Rachel died 8 months ago. Cardiac event. She was 41. She paused. "She was living alone in Cincinnati. She had a small insurance policy and no other assets. Her neighbor, a woman named Martha Collins, found her. Martha found my name in Rachel's address book because Rachel had written at some point, 'Whitman knows about Lily.' Martha contacted me 6 weeks ago." Jack sat back down, not because he decided to, because his legs made the decision. "Rachel knew about you," he said. "Rachel had figured out some of it," Claire said. "Not all, but enough to write my name down." She reached into a folder on the counter. He hadn't noticed the folder until now, and slid a piece of paper across the table. Martha also found this. It was a photograph. Printout, not original. A little girl, maybe 5 or 6, dark hair, serious expression, sitting on a porch step. Lily. A photograph of Lily that Jack did not recognize, that he had not taken. "Where did Rachel get this?" he said. "I don't know," Claire said. "Martha found it with the address book." Jack held the photograph and looked at his daughter's face. 5 years old. Sitting on a porch step he didn't recognize. Serious expression, which was Lily's way of looking at the world when she was trying to understand it. His throat did something he wasn't ready for. "She was watching her," he said. "Rachel was watching her." "I think so. From a distance." Claire's voice was steady, but not cold. "I think Rachel spent years watching from a distance because she was afraid to come closer and because someone made very sure she believed closer was dangerous." Jack put the photograph down on the table between them. He said nothing for a long time. Then, "You could have mailed me this. You could have sent it anonymously. You didn't have to call me. You didn't have to tell me any of this in person." "No," Claire said. "I didn't." "So why?" She looked at him directly. "Because I live in a house full of things my husband managed from a distance and called love, and I refuse to do one more thing from a distance and call it good enough." That sentence landed somewhere in Jack's chest and stayed there. He looked at the photograph of Lily. He looked at Claire Whitman's steady hands on the table. He thought about a letter written by a woman trying to come back, intercepted by a man with resources and files, and a category called peripheral management. He thought about Lily asking at 6 years old, "But why couldn't she stay dad?" And the answer, the real answer, the one he hadn't known to give, was someone made sure she couldn't. "I need some air," he said. "Take your time," Claire said. He went outside. He stood in the cold and breathed and looked at nothing and let himself feel the full weight of it for exactly 3 minutes. The anger, the grief, the specific grief of knowing that a wound you'd accepted as random had actually been deliberate. And then he pulled himself back together, the way he always did, the way single parents always do, because there was nobody else to do it. He went back inside. "I need to see the files," he said. "I have copies," Claire said. "Everything I found. I'll give you all of it." "And this Gareth Cole, is he still practicing?" "Yes," Claire said. But Jack, I know, he said. I heard you. Attorneys and resources and the kind of power that destroys people who react before they think. He sat down. I'm thinking. She looked at him. And something in her face shifted, the last small piece of guardedness dissolving. Okay, she said quietly. Good. They sat at the kitchen table for another hour. Jack went through the copies. Claire answered every question he asked directly without softening. He asked good questions, precise, sequential, following the logic of the documents, and she noticed that about him, the precision, the way he thought in load-bearing structures, even when the structure was human and the load was grief. At 11:30, he closed the folder and said, I have to do the East Wing. You don't have to do anything today, she said. I told you I'd do the East Wing, he said. So I'm doing the East Wing. She almost smiled. Okay. He worked through lunch. She brought him a plate without asking. He ate it without stopping work, which she observed from the doorway for a moment before leaving without a word. At 2:15 his phone rang. It was the school. Lily had pushed a boy on the playground, not hit pushed. Hard enough that he'd stumbled. The reason, according to the teacher, was that the boy had said, my mom made my lunch special today, and Lily had looked at him and said, nobody cares about your mom, and then pushed him when he said that's mean. I'll be there in 20 minutes, Jack said. He packed his tools. He found Claire in the hallway. I have to go, he said. School called. Lily. Go. Claire said immediately. Go. He was at the door. He stopped. He turned back. The documents. I'll keep them safe, she said. They're not going anywhere. He nodded. He started to leave. Jack? He stopped. She's reacting to something she doesn't have words for yet, Claire said. Kids do that. It doesn't mean she's broken. He looked at her. How do you know that? A pause, brief, but something moved in it. Because I did the same thing, Claire said. For about 12 years, just with less pushing and more silence. He left. Lily was sitting in the principal's office with her arms crossed and her chin up and her jaw set in exactly the way Jack's jaw set when he was angry and trying not to show it. She looked at him when he came in and then looked away, which meant she was embarrassed, which meant she already knew she'd done something wrong, which meant the conversation was going to be delicate. He talked to the principal. He apologized on Lily's behalf. He said the right things in the right order, the way you learn to do it when you've been managing situations alone long enough. In the car, Lily sat in the back seat and looked out the window. You want to tell me what happened? Jack said. No. Okay. Silence. 2 blocks. 3. He kept talking about his mom, Lily said. Like every sentence. My mom this, my mom that. And I just... She stopped. You just what? I just got so angry, she said. And I don't know why. That's the part I don't understand. Why did I get so angry? Jack drove and thought about how to answer that honestly without giving her more than she could hold. Because sometimes other people having something we want doesn't make us sad first, he said. Sometimes it makes us angry first. And the anger feels better than the sad, so we lead with that. Lily was quiet. But I have you, she said. So why would I be sad? You can have me and still wonder about your mom, Jack said. Those aren't the same thing. You can love what you have and still miss what you don't. That's not disloyalty. That's just being human. He heard her breathe in, breathe out. Did she love me? Lily asked, very quietly. Jack's hands tightened on the wheel. Yes, he said. In the way she was able to, yes. How do you know? Because she kept a picture of you, he said. Even from far away. He hadn't planned to say that. He hadn't decided yet how much to tell her or when. But it came out because Lily had asked him a direct question, and he had never lied to her directly, not once in 7 years, and he wasn't starting now. Lily went very still in the back seat. She had a picture of me, she said. Yeah, Bug, she did. The silence that followed was different from the silences before it. Fuller, heavier. The kind of silence that means something is being rearranged inside a person. "Okay," Lily finally said. Very small. "Yeah," Jack said. "Okay." He drove. Lily looked out the window. Neither of them said anything for a long time, and it was not a comfortable silence, but it was an honest one, which was the only kind Jack knew how to be in. 2 days later, he brought Lily to Claire's. He hadn't planned that either. He had a full day of work to finish in the East Wing, and no school a Teachers' Institute day. And Mrs. Petrova had a doctor's appointment, and the backup babysitter had a conflict. And he'd almost called Claire to reschedule, when he stopped himself and thought, or I could just bring her. He called Claire and said, "I have a situation. Lily doesn't have school. If it's a problem, I can reschedule." "Bring her," Claire said, without hesitation. He noticed the without hesitation. He didn't say anything about it. Lily sat in Claire's kitchen with a book while Jack worked. She ate the crackers and apple slices Claire set out without being asked, not because she was comfortable, but because food was food, and Lily was practical, and she read with the focused intensity she brought to everything. At some point, Claire came into the kitchen to refill her coffee, and Lily looked up and studied her with the open, unself-conscious directness that children have before the world teaches them it's impolite. "You have a really big house," Lily said. "I do," Claire said. "But it's quiet," Lily said. "Like nobody's home, even when you're home." Claire stopped moving. "You noticed that?" "Yeah," Lily said. "It feels like a museum. You know when you go to a museum and everything's really nice but you're not supposed to touch anything?" Claire set her mug down very carefully. "Yes," she said. "I know that feeling." "Is it lonely?" Lily asked. And Claire Whitman, who had been composed and precise and controlled through every difficult thing this week, looked at this 7-year-old child with the direct dark eyes and said, "Yes, it is." "Okay," Lily said, and went back to her book, as if loneliness was a problem that had been identified and could now be addressed, and the first step was simply admitting it was there. Claire stood at the counter and did not move for a long moment. Then she went back to her work. But something had shifted in the house. Something small and significant. The way a single light turned on can change the character of an entire room. An hour later, Lily wandered. She did this, Jack had told Claire when they arrived. She wandered when she'd finished processing something and needed new input. She was not a destructive wanderer. She touched nothing. She just looked. She found the hallway. She found the locked door. She stood in front of it for a moment. Claire appeared behind her so quietly that Lily didn't startle. She just turned calmly, as if she'd known someone was there. "What's in there?" Lily asked. "My studio," Claire said, "where I used to paint." "Can I see?" The question sat in the hallway between them. "It's locked," Claire said. "You have the key," Lily said, not pushing, just observing. Claire looked at the door, then at Lily, then at the door again. She put the key in the lock. The studio opened, and Lily walked in and stopped in the center of the room, and turned slowly, taking it all in: the canvases, the smell, the light, the feeling of a space where someone had once made things with urgency, and she didn't touch a single object. Then she turned to the large canvas hung against the far wall, the one facing outward. The woman in the burning room holding a hand that scratched out into nothing. Lily looked at it for a long time. Claire stood in the doorway and waited. "Were you painting a child you lost?" Lily asked. The words were so direct and so accurate and so completely without cruelty that Claire had no defense against them. "Yes," she said. "I was." Lily turned and looked at her. "What was her name?" "Emma." "Where is Emma now?" "With her grandmother," Claire said. "Far away." Lily turned back to the painting. She looked at the scratched-out face, at the gouged, obliterated space where a child's features should have been. She was quiet for a full minute. Then she said, "You scratched her face out because it hurt too much to look at her." "Yes," Claire said. "But that didn't make it hurt less, did it?" Lily said. "No," Claire said. "It didn't." Lily turned around. She looked at Claire with those direct, dark eyes, and she said simply honestly, without any performance, "My mom left too, and my dad scratched her out of things for a while, like putting her pictures away, but it didn't help either." She paused. "The missing is still there. You just don't have anything to look at while you're missing." Claire sat down on the floor of her own studio. Not dramatically. She just went down cross-legged like her legs had quietly stopped holding the position. And Lily walked over and sat down next to her. Not touching, just near. The way a child sits next to something that is sad and cannot be fixed and simply needs company. They sat like that for a while. Jack found them when he came looking for Lily. Both of them on the floor of the studio. Lily reading her book, Claire with her knees pulled up and her back against the wall and her eyes on the painting, and an expression on her face that he had never seen on another adult human being in his entire life. It was the expression of someone who had just been seen. Completely. Accurately. By a 7-year-old with a book and no agenda. He stood in the doorway and said nothing. Claire looked up and met his eyes, and something passed between them. Something too large and too complicated to name, the kind of thing that happens between people who have both been carrying very heavy things alone for very long, and have just in the same moment understood that the other person knows the weight. He didn't say anything. She didn't either. Lily looked up from her book, looked at her father, looked at Claire, looked back at her book. "We're good, Dad," she said. "Give us 5 more minutes." Jack almost laughed. He almost laughed for the first time in longer than he could accurately remember. He went back to the East Wing. He picked up his tools, and he thought, "Something is happening here. Something I did not plan and cannot fix with anything in this bag." He thought about Rachel's photograph, about the files in the folder, about a letter that never arrived, and 7 years of an absence he'd tried to explain to a child in careful partial installments. He thought about Lily sitting on the studio floor next to a woman who had lost a child and saying, "The missing is still there. You just don't have anything to look at while you're missing." 7 years old, and wiser already than the adults who had been making decisions around her entire life. He finished the East Wing. He packed his tools. He collected Lily, who said a polite and genuine goodbye to Claire, and took his hand in the car without being asked, which she only did when something had moved her. He drove home through the early dark, and Lily fell asleep in the back seat before they hit the highway, and he drove in silence and thought about all of it. The files, the letter, the painting, the scratched-out face, the woman sitting on the floor of her own studio because a child had asked her the right question. He thought about how you could spend years managing loss, packaging it, filing it, locking it behind doors with old brass keys, and how sometimes it took someone with no investment in the management to walk in and simply name what they saw. He thought about how he was falling in love with Claire Whitman. He thought it clearly without flinching, the way you can think something clearly in the dark of a car when a child is asleep and there is nobody to perform for. And then he thought, and that is going to be the most complicated thing that has ever happened to either of us. He was right. He just didn't know yet how right. The call from Martha Collins came on a Wednesday morning 3 weeks after Lily sat on the studio floor and said things that grown adults had spent years unable to say. Jack was on a ladder in a commercial building in Pilsen when his phone rang, a Cincinnati number he recognized immediately because he'd saved it after Claire had first mentioned Martha's name. He came down from the ladder before he answered. He didn't know why. Instinct, maybe. The specific instinct that tells a person, "Take your feet off the ladder before you hear this." "Mr. Miller," Martha said. "I'm sorry to call without warning. I found something else in Rachel's apartment. I should have looked more carefully the first time, but I didn't know what I was dealing with." A pause. "There's a letter. Handwritten. Addressed to you. It was sealed inside a book on her shelf. I almost missed it." Jack stood on the concrete floor and said, "Read it to me." "I think you should—" "Martha, read it to me, please." A long pause. The sound of paper unfolding. Martha read. The letter was 2 pages. Rachel's handwriting, which Jack hadn't seen in 7 years, but recognized immediately the looped lowercase. The way she pressed hard on certain words like she was trying to make them permanent was uneven in places, steadier in others. The handwriting of someone who had started and started again over what he guessed was a period of days. Rachel wrote that she had been clean for 4 years. She wrote that she had a job, an apartment, a therapist named Dr. Ewan who had helped her understand things about herself she should have understood 20 years earlier. She wrote that she knew she had no right to ask for anything. She wrote that she was not asking for anything. She needed him to know. She had tried to come back. Twice. The first time an attorney had responded to her inquiry with a letter so precise and so devastating that she had believed for 3 years that Jack himself had commissioned it. That Jack had decided correctly, she wrote he was correct. I was a disaster that the cleanest solution was to make her legally unwelcome. The second time, she had written directly. A real letter to his address. She had waited 6 weeks for a response. When none came, she had concluded that he had received it and chosen silence, which was its own kind of answer. She wrote, I have spent years believing you shut the door, and I have spent those same years believing you were right to. I was not a safe person to be Lily's mother, but I was trying to become one, and I needed you to know that. I needed at least the truth of that to exist somewhere. She wrote, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't know if I'll ever send it. But if something happens to me and someone finds this, I hope it reaches you. I hope you tell Lily that I kept her picture on my nightstand, every single night. I hope you tell her I was trying. Martha stopped reading. The line was quiet for a long moment. Mr. Miller? Martha said softly. Are you there? Yeah, Jack said. His voice came out strange, compressed, like something was sitting on his chest. I'm here. I'm sorry, Martha said. I'm so sorry. He thanked her. He told her he'd call back about the letter about getting the original. He ended the call and put his phone in his pocket and stood in the middle of an empty commercial building in Pilsen and did not move for a very long time. Rachel had not abandoned them. Rachel had tried to come back and had been turned away by an attorney she thought Jack had hired. Rachel had written a letter that Jack had never received. Rachel had spent years believing Jack had shut the door, the same years Jack had spent believing Rachel had simply chosen to be gone. Daniel Whitman's peripheral management had cost 2 people 7 years of a truth they could have known. And Rachel had died believing the lie. Jack drove to Claire's house that afternoon without calling first. He rang the bell and stood at the door, and when Claire opened it and saw his face, she said nothing. She just stepped back and let him in. He stood in her foyer and told her about the letter. All of it. His voice stayed even for most of it, and then stopped being even at the part about the nightstand. About the picture on the nightstand, every single night. When he finished, Claire said, I'm sorry, Jack. I am so deeply sorry. Did you know, he said, about the letter? About Cole specifically intercepting? No, she said. I knew Cole's firm was involved. I didn't know the mechanism. I didn't know about the letter. She held his gaze. I would have told you. He looked at her for a long moment. He was looking for the crack, the place where the answer wasn't entirely true, and he didn't find it. He believed her. He believed her because Claire Whitman, whatever else she was, had consistently given him the truth in a context where lying would have been considerably more comfortable. Okay, he said. Okay, she said. I believe you. He sat down on the bench in her foyer, which was not a bench designed for sitting. It was decorative architectural, and he sat on it anyway and put his head in his hands. She kept Lily's picture on her nightstand, he said to his hands. 7 years. She kept it every single night. Claire sat beside him on the impractical bench, close enough that their shoulders were almost touching. She didn't put her arm around him. She didn't offer anything soft or managing. She just sat there, present and still the way Lily had sat beside her on the studio floor 3 weeks ago. He stayed for 2 hours. They talked through what to do about Cole. Claire knew attorneys obviously knew. The landscape knew which moves were useful and which ones were expensive noise. They talked through the documents, the timeline, what could and couldn't be proven. It was practical and necessary, and it gave Jack something to do with the anger that wasn't going to help anyone if he just aimed it blindly. When he left, Claire walked him to the door and said, "When are you going to tell Lily?" "I don't know," he said. "How do you tell a 7-year-old that her mother tried?" "You tell her the truth," Claire said, "in the amount she can hold, and then you give her time to hold it." He looked at her. "You're good at that," he said, knowing exactly how much truth a person can hold at once. "I've had a lot of practice," she said, "being given more than I could hold." He nodded. He left. He told Lily on a Saturday morning. He made pancakes first, not to soften the news, but because some conversations needed to happen at a table with food with the ordinary reality of syrup and plates grounding everything. He sat across from her, and he told her in careful, sequential language that her mother had tried to come back, that someone had made it very hard, that the letter her mother had written had never arrived, that none of it had been as Lily had quietly never quite suspected, because Rachel found them too easy to leave. Lily listened without interrupting. She ate her pancakes while she listened, which Jack took as a sign that she was processing rather than shutting down. When he finished, she put her fork down and said, "So she didn't choose to not come back?" "Not entirely," Jack said. "No. But she also wasn't okay," Lily said carefully. "For a long time." "That's true too." Lily looked at the table. "So it's both things at the same time." "Yeah, Bug, it's both things." "That's really hard," Lily said, very quietly. "That's harder than if it was just one thing." "I know," Jack said. Lily picked her fork back up. She ate a bite of pancake. She said to her plate, "Did she know what I look like now, or only from the picture?" And Jack, who had promised himself he would hold it together for this conversation, no matter what, felt something tear in his chest at that question, at the specific grief of a child wondering whether her mother would recognize her. "Only from the picture," he said. "The one from when you were 5. Lily nodded slowly. "She would have been surprised," Lily said. "I grew a lot." He didn't answer that. He couldn't answer that. "Dad," Lily said. She looked up. "Are you okay?" He almost laughed. His 7-year-old daughter processing the most painful thing he'd ever tried to give her, asking if he was okay. "Working on it," he said. She reached across the table and put her hand on top of his. Small, warm, completely certain. "Me too," she said. The grief came for Lily not that Saturday, but the following Tuesday. It arrived the way real grief always arrived for children, sideways, through a door you didn't see coming. Lily stopped eating dinner. Not dramatically, she just moved food around her plate and claimed she wasn't hungry 2 nights in a row, then 3. She started waking up at 2 and 3 in the morning and coming to stand in Jack's doorway, not coming in just standing there as if confirming something. He would say, "Hey, Bug," and she would say, "Just checking," and go back to bed. On Thursday, she pushed the boy at school again. Not the same boy, a different one. This time the reason was that the boy had said his mom was picking him up early for a dentist appointment, and Lily had told him that was stupid, and when he disagreed, she'd shoved him. The teacher called Jack and used the word escalating, and Jack said, "I understand, I'm handling it," and picked Lily up early. In the car, Lily cried for the first time. Not soft crying, the hard kind, the kind that comes from somewhere deep and pressurized, the kind that sounds almost like anger, because it started as anger and ran out of room. She cried for 11 minutes, which Jack counted because counting was the only useful thing he could do, and he drove and let her cry, and didn't say it's okay because it wasn't okay, and Lily knew the difference. When she stopped, she wiped her face with both hands and said, "I keep being mad at people who have moms." "I know," Jack said. "It's not fair to them," she said. "No, but it makes sense." "Does it get better?" she asked. He thought about lying. He thought about the comfortable, well-intentioned lie that parents told children because the truth felt too heavy. And then he thought about Claire sitting on the studio floor. He thought about Rachel's letter. He thought about what happened to people who were given managed versions of the truth. It gets different, he said. The missing doesn't go away, but you get bigger and the missing kind of stays the same size, so it takes up less of you. Lily thought about this with the serious concentration she gave to difficult problems. Like fractions, she said. He blinked. What? Like fractions. The missing is the same number, but the bottom number gets bigger, so the whole thing gets smaller. He stared at the road ahead. Yeah, he said. Exactly like fractions. Okay, Lily said, and looked out the window. He called Claire from the parking lot outside their apartment that night after Lily was asleep. He told her about the crying, about the pushing, about the fractions. Claire was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "She's going to be all right." "I know," he said. "I know she is. I just—" He stopped. "You hate that she's hurting," Claire said. "She's 7. She should be worried about recess and what's for lunch, not carrying—" "Jack." Claire's voice was quiet but firm. "She's not carrying it alone. That's different from what you went through. That's different from what I went through. She has you. And she has—" A pause. "She has people who are paying attention." He heard what she didn't say in that pause. "Claire," he said. "Don't," she said gently. "I wasn't going to say anything complicated," he said. "Yes, you were." And there was something in her voice, something warm and careful, and a little sad. "And I'd probably say something back. And then we'd both be standing in parking lots at 11 o'clock at night having a conversation we're not ready to have." He almost smiled. "How do you know I'm in a parking lot?" "Because you always call from parking lots," she said. "You call when you're between places. When you're not quite home yet and not quite somewhere else." He sat with that for a moment. The accuracy of it. The specific accuracy of a person who had been paying attention. "Bring Lily on Saturday," Claire said. "I'll set up the studio. She can paint if she wants. Or not. She can just be somewhere different for a few hours." "Claire." "It's not complicated," she said. "It's Saturday afternoon. Bring her." He brought her. Lily walked into the studio on Saturday, like she owned it with the complete comfort of a child who has decided a space is safe, and she looked at Claire and said, "Can I use the blue?" "Any color you want," Claire said. Lily painted for 2 hours. She didn't talk much, which was unusual for her, but she painted with the focused intensity of someone working something out, and Claire sat at her own easel nearby, and for the first time in 2 years, picked up a brush. Jack sat in the kitchen and drank coffee and listened to the silence from the studio, which was not empty silence. It was the particular silence of 2 people making things in the same room. It had texture and weight, and the specific quality of something that mattered. At 3 o'clock, Lily came out of the studio with paint on both arms and a canvas in her hands. She held it out for Jack to see. 3 figures, standing in blue-gray rain. 1 large one, medium, 1 small. 2 of them had faces. The third, the smallest, was only a shadow. A shape. Present, but incomplete. "That's us," Lily said. "And that's Mom, the shadow one, because she's still there, but she's also not." Jack looked at the painting for a long moment. "That's beautiful, Bug," he said. "Claire helped me with the gray," Lily said. "I kept making it too dark." "It's exactly right now," he said. Lily looked at her painting with the critical, honest assessment of someone who made things seriously. "Yeah," she said. "I think so too." Claire appeared in the kitchen doorway. She looked at the painting. Something moved across her face. Something Jack was learning to read the micro-expressions she'd spent 12 years suppressing and was only recently beginning to let surface. "Lily," Claire said. "That's remarkable." Lily looked up at her. "You can have it," she said, "if you want, for your studio." Claire blinked. "You sure?" "Yeah," Lily said. "You have a lot of paintings in there, but they're all your sadness. You should have some of mine too. Then it's not just yours." The kitchen went completely still. Jack watched Claire receive that sentence, watched her hold it, watched her try to maintain the composure she reached for by habit, and watched it fail. Not dramatically, just a single quiet failure of the mechanism. Her eyes filled, and she looked at the ceiling for a second, and then back at Lily. "I would be honored," Claire said. "Thank you." Lily nodded, satisfied, and went to wash the paint off her arms. Jack looked at Claire. Claire looked at Jack. "She's extraordinary," Claire said. Her voice had that slightly uneven quality of someone who has been moved past the point of managing it. "I know," Jack said. "I take no credit. She came that way." Claire almost laughed. She was still holding it together by a thread, and the almost laugh pulled the thread tighter. "I need to show you something," she said. Her voice shifted back to something more careful, more deliberate. The quality it took on when she was about to give him something difficult. "I found something else in Daniel's files, last week. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you." Jack went still. "What is it?" She went to the counter drawer. She took out a single sheet of paper, a photocopy of a document clearly legal in format, dense with language, and held it out. He took it. He read it. It took him a minute to understand what he was looking at. It was a memo. Internal. From Cole's firm. Dated 4 years ago. It referenced the Whitman family account and a matter of third-party contact management, and a name not Rachel's name, not Jack's name, but a name he recognized. Dr. Sandra Ewan, Rachel's therapist. The memo referenced a consultation with Dr. Ewan's billing service, not a breach of therapy records, nothing that explicit. Just a subtle indirect contact enough to confirm that Rachel was at that time in treatment and making progress. Enough to time the next discouragement precisely. Enough to know when Rachel was strongest, and therefore most likely to try again, and to ensure that was exactly when the door was most firmly closed. They had monitored Rachel's recovery. They had waited for her to get better, and then made sure it didn't matter. Jack set the paper down on the counter. He stood completely still. And then he said in a voice that was very quiet and very controlled, "I need you to leave me alone for a minute." Claire nodded. She left the kitchen. He stood there with the paper and the coffee going cold, and the sound of water running from the bathroom where Lily was washing paint off her arms and singing something tuneless and quiet to herself, the way she sang when she was content, when she felt safe. And he held all of it at the same time. The letter, the intercepted response, the monitored therapy, the precise, calculated years-long management of a woman who was trying to come back to her daughter. The sound of Lily singing. He picked up the paper. He folded it once, twice into his jacket pocket. He breathed. Then Lily appeared in the kitchen doorway, arms clean, a small paint smear still on her left cheek that she'd missed. "Dad," she said, "can we stay for dinner?" He looked at his daughter, at the paint on her cheek, at the absolute, uncomplicated trust in her face. "Yeah, Bug," he said. "Let's stay for dinner." Claire, who had been in the hallway close enough to hear, came back into the kitchen. She looked at Jack. He looked at her. Something passed between them, the weight of the paper in his pocket, the sound of Lily still humming the specific complexity of everything that was true at once. "Pasta, okay?" Claire said. "Pasta's perfect," Lily said, and climbed onto a kitchen stool like she'd done it 100 times. They made dinner together. Claire and Lily and Jack in the kitchen of the too-quiet house that was becoming in these Saturday increments slightly less quiet. Lily narrated the entire process with the authority of someone who had opinions about pasta and was not afraid to share them. Claire listened with complete attention, asking follow-up questions, laughing at the right moments, and Jack stood at the counter and watched the two of them and felt something he had no name for, something complicated and painful and necessary, like circulation returning to a limb that had been still too long. They were almost done eating when Lily said, unprompted, looking at her plate, "I think my mom would have liked it here." Jack looked up. Claire looked up. Lily kept looking at her plate. She liked quiet, but the good kind of quiet, not the lonely kind. She looked up at Claire. "Your house is getting more of the good kind." Claire set her fork down, very carefully. "I think you're right," she said. Lily nodded and went back to her pasta. And Jack thought, "This is the most dangerous thing I have ever walked into. This warmth. This specific, particular warmth. Because I can feel exactly how much Lily needs it. And I can feel exactly how much Claire needs it. And I can feel what happens to both of them if this goes wrong." He thought, "I cannot let this go wrong," he thought. "Which means I have to deal with the paper in my pocket. The memo. Cole's firm, Daniel Whitman's files, and the years of managed truth and the woman who died believing a lie." He thought, "I have to deal with all of it. And I have to do it without blowing up the warmest thing that has happened in this apartment or this house or this family in longer than either of us can say." After dinner, after Lily fell asleep on Claire's couch, completely without ceremony, as children fall asleep when they feel safe, Jack took the paper out of his pocket and put it on the coffee table between them. Claire looked at it, then at him. "What do we do?" he said. She looked at the paper for a long time. Then she said, "We do it carefully, and we do it together, and we make sure that whatever happens next—" She stopped. "We make sure Lily doesn't lose anything else." Jack looked at his daughter asleep on the couch, one arm flung over her face the way she'd slept since she was a baby. Rabbit tucked under her other arm, the paint smear still on her cheek. "Yeah," he said. "That's the only thing that matters." But they both knew, sitting in that room with the paper between them and the child asleep, and everything that had been built and everything that was still broken, that Careful and Together were about to be tested in ways neither of them had prepared for. The document in Jack's pocket connected Claire's world to his daughter's wound. And when Lily found out, not if when, because Lily always found out, Lily always asked the right question at the wrong time, the careful thing they were building was going to face the one pressure it hadn't been tested against. The truth. The whole truth. All at once. The careful thing lasted 9 days. 9 days of Jack and Claire working through the documents, methodically, quietly, the way you dismantle something dangerous, slowly with both hands without sudden movements. 9 days of phone calls after Lily's bedtime of Claire's contact at a different firm, reviewing the memo of building something that looked less like revenge and more like a record. A true record. The kind that existed on paper and couldn't be managed away. 9 days of Saturdays in the studio and pasta dinners, and Lily's painting hung on the wall of Claire's studio next to canvases that cost 10 times what Jack made in a month. And somehow the small painting with the blue-gray rain and the shadow figure belonged there more than anything else in the room. 9 days of Jack telling himself, not yet. Not until it's solid. Not until Lily can't be caught in the middle of it. The 9th day was a Tuesday. Lily had a half day at school. Jack picked her up at noon, and they drove to Claire's because Lily had left Rabbit there on Saturday, a thing that had never happened before Rabbit leaving the apartment, which Jack understood was significant in a way Lily wasn't ready to articulate, and Claire had texted Rabbit, "is safe. He's been sitting in the kitchen watching me work." Very judgmental energy. Lily had laughed so hard she'd snorted, which was the best sound Jack knew. They arrived at Claire's at 12:30. Claire opened the door and immediately crouched to Lily's level and held out Rabbit with both hands, like a formal diplomatic exchange, and Lily took him with great solemnity and said, "Thank you for taking care of him." "He was excellent company," Claire said. "He has opinions about coffee." "He prefers hot chocolate," Lily said. "He just doesn't know how to say it." Claire smiled. A real smile, the kind that started in her eyes before it reached her mouth, the kind Jack had watched emerge slowly over weeks, the way something emerges when the pressure above it is gradually, carefully removed. They went inside. Lily went to the studio, her studio now in the way children claim spaces that feel like theirs, and Jack followed Claire to the kitchen. He should have seen it coming. He knew Lily. He had 7 years of evidence about how Lily moved through spaces and processed information, and arrived at truth through a combination of observation, silence, and questions that landed like precision instruments. He knew all of that, and he still didn't see it coming. He and Claire were at the kitchen table with the folder open between them. The attorney had sent notes. There were things to discuss, decisions to make about next steps when Lily appeared in the kitchen doorway. She was holding a piece of paper. Not Rabbit. Not a paintbrush. A piece of paper folded in the way documents got folded when they came out of a folder, crisp and rectangular. Jack's stomach dropped before his brain caught up. "Lily," he said. "Where did you get that?" "It was on the floor in the studio," she said. "By the supply cabinet. I thought it was a drawing." She looked at the paper, then at him. "It's not a drawing." She had read it. He could see it in her face, the particular stillness that meant something was being processed at a level that would take time to surface fully. She had read it, and she understood enough of it, because Lily's reading was 2 grades ahead, and her comprehension was higher than that. "Come sit down," Jack said. "No," Lily said. She stayed in the doorway. "Who is Dr. Ewan?" Silence. "Lily. Dad." Her voice was very controlled, very 7 years old, trying to be older than 7. "Who is Dr. Ewan?" "She was your mom's therapist," Jack said. Lily looked at the paper. "And someone was watching her while she was getting better." "Yes. Someone from here." She looked at Claire. Not accusatory, not yet, but with the specific focused intensity of someone locating a fact on a map. "Someone connected to this house." Claire stood up from the table. She didn't reach for the paper or try to manage the moment. She just stood up and she looked at Lily directly and she said, "Yes. My husband's attorney was involved. I didn't know about it while it was happening. I found out after Daniel died from his files." Lily held Claire's gaze for a long moment. "But you knew," Lily said. "Before today. You knew and you didn't tell me." "Yes," Claire said. "We were trying to—" "You were deciding," Lily said. Her voice cracked, not from sadness, from something fiercer. "You were deciding how much to tell me and when, just like everyone else always does." She looked at Jack. "You too, Dad." Jack opened his mouth. Lily's voice rose. Not a shout. Something worse than a shout. The particular pitch of a child who has run out of patience for being protected. "Everybody keeps deciding things about my life without asking me. Mom decided to leave. Those lawyers decided she couldn't come back. You decided when to tell me she tried. And now you're both sitting here deciding this together. And I'm in the other room with Rabbit not knowing that people in this house are connected to why my mom died, thinking I didn't want her." The last 6 words landed in the kitchen like something dropped from a height. Jack was on his feet. "Lily, your mom did not die thinking—" "She wrote the letter and never sent it," Lily said. "Because she thought you didn't want her to come back. And someone here made her think that. And you knew. And you didn't tell me." She pressed the back of her hand against her mouth, a gesture Jack had never seen her make, something raw and unlearned. "I found out from a piece of paper on the floor." She turned and walked back down the hallway. Not running. Walking. The kind of walking that was controlled because losing control felt too dangerous. They heard the studio door close. Not slam. Close. Firmly. Jack stood in the kitchen with his hands at his sides and felt the specific helplessness of a parent who has miscalculated, not maliciously, not carelessly, but miscalculated nonetheless, and is now paying the full price of it. He thought he'd been protecting her. He thought careful, and together meant giving it time. He had not considered that Lily's definition of protection was entirely different from his. He started toward the hallway. Claire's hand touched his arm. Light brief. "Let me," she said. He stopped. "Claire." "Jack." She looked at him steadily. "She's angry at both of us. But the thing she said, the thing about people in this house being connected to her mother, that's mine to answer, not yours." A pause. "Let me answer it." He looked at her for a moment. Then he stepped back. Claire walked down the hallway alone. She stood outside the studio door. She didn't knock immediately. She stood there and breathed in through the nose, out through the mouth, a technique she'd learned in a therapy session she'd attended exactly once before Daniel had made clear his opinion of therapy. And she thought about what Lily needed. Not what would make Lily feel better. Not what would resolve the situation efficiently. What Lily actually needed. She knocked. Silence. Lily. She kept her voice level, unhurried. I'm not going to tell you to come out. You don't have to come out. I just want to talk through the door if that's okay. A beat. Fine, Lily said, muffled, still controlled. Claire leaned her back against the wall beside the door and slid down it until she was sitting on the floor of the hallway. If Lily opened the door, she'd see an adult sitting on the floor, which was not an intimidating posture. Which was the point. You're right, Claire said. Everything you said in the kitchen was right. Silence from the studio. Adults decided things around you that you deserved to have a voice in, Claire said. Your dad and I told ourselves we were protecting you, that we were waiting until we had everything clear. But what we actually did was make the same mistake every adult in your life has made. We decided what you could handle instead of asking you. She paused. I'm sorry, Lily. I'm specifically sorry for my part of it. A long silence. Then from the other side of the door, your husband's people made my mom think nobody wanted her. Yes, Claire said. They did. And you lived with him. I did. Did you know he did stuff like that while you were living with him? Claire closed her eyes briefly. I knew he controlled things. I knew he managed people and situations in ways that weren't kind. I told myself it wasn't my business, that it didn't involve me. She stopped. That was wrong. When you live next to something wrong and tell yourself it's not your business, you're still part of it. The studio was quiet for a long moment. That's really honest, Lily said. I'm done being anything else, Claire said. Another silence. Then the sound of movement. Then the door opened. Lily stood there with Rabbit under one arm, and her eyes red but dry. She'd been crying, but she'd finished, which with Lily meant she was ready to think again. She looked down at Claire sitting on the hallway floor, and something shifted in her face. Why are you on the floor? She said. Seemed like the right level, Claire said. Lily looked at her for a moment. Then she sat down on the floor too, directly across from Claire, back against the opposite wall, Rabbit in her lap. They sat like that facing each other in the hallway, both on the floor, and Claire said, What do you want to know? Ask me anything. I'll tell you the truth. Lily thought about it seriously. Did my mom know about you? Specifically about you. Not about me specifically. She knew Daniel Whitman's firm was involved. She wrote his name down in her address book. Claire paused. That's how Martha found me. Rachel had written my name because she'd traced it that far. So she was trying to figure it out, Lily said. Yes, she was. She was smart, Lily said quietly. Not a question. She sounds like she was very smart, Claire said, and very brave. Getting clean and staying clean is one of the hardest things a person can do. Lily stroked Rabbit's ear, the particular slow stroke she used when she was thinking deeply. Do you think she forgave my dad not for what she thought he did? Claire thought about how to answer that honestly. I think she wrote a letter explaining everything. And I think the fact that she wrote it even when she didn't know if she'd ever send it means she wanted him to understand, which is close to forgiveness, maybe the same thing. Lily absorbed this. Okay, she said. Can you get my dad? Claire stood up from the floor, less gracefully than she'd gone down, which made Lily's mouth twitch slightly, and went to the kitchen and said, She wants you. Jack was in the kitchen, with his hands flat on the table, and the expression of a man who had spent the last 7 minutes in a very specific kind of hell. He looked up at Claire, and she nodded once she's okay, and he walked down the hallway. He found Lily on the floor and sat down next to her, right there in the hallway, without asking why they were on the floor, because some things you just match. Lily leaned into his side. Not dramatically, just landed against him shoulder to shoulder and stayed. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner, Jack said. I know why you didn't, Lily said. You didn't want me to be sad. Yeah. But Dad, I was already sad. I've been sad for a long time. The not telling didn't stop the sad. It just meant I was sad alone. He put his arm around her. He pulled her in. You're right, he said. I'm sorry. Lily was quiet for a moment. Then, I'm not mad at Claire. No. She sat on the floor, Lily said. People who are trying to win don't sit on the floor. Jack almost laughed. Can I ask you something? Lily said. Anything. Do you love her? The hallway was extremely quiet. Jack considered lying. He considered a careful managed partial truth. He looked at his daughter, who was looking up at him with the direct dark eyes that had never once been fooled by careful management. Yeah, he said. I think I do. Lily nodded slowly. She loves you too, she said. She looks at you like Mrs. Petrova looks at her plants, like something she's taking care of that she doesn't want to mess up. He had no response to that. He held his daughter and looked at the ceiling. Is that okay? He asked. With you? Lily thought about it genuinely seriously, the way she thought about important things. I think so, she said. But you have to ask me stuff, both of you. No more deciding without asking. Deal, he said immediately. And Rabbit has to be welcome here, she said. Officially. I'll talk to Claire. I'll talk to Claire, Lily corrected. It should come from me. He looked down at her. Okay, he said. Yeah, it should. Claire was in the kitchen making tea, the particular kind of deliberate, task-focused activity people engage in when they need something to do with their hands. When Lily came in alone and sat on the counter stool and said, Rabbit is officially requesting residency. Claire turned around. Sorry. He wants to be allowed to stay here sometimes, Lily said. Officially, like a rule. Claire looked at the stuffed rabbit. She looked at Lily. I think that's a very reasonable request, she said. Officially granted. Lily nodded. Then she said, I need to tell you something. Okay, Claire said. She put the tea down and gave Lily her full attention. When I'm really mad, Lily said, I say things that are true, but I say them in a mean way, and I said some mean things in the kitchen, about this house, about you deciding. Everything you said was fair, Lily. It was fair, but some of it was mean, Lily said. There's a difference, and I'm sorry for the mean part. She looked at Claire steadily. I'm not sorry for the true part. Claire looked at this child, this extraordinary, impossible child, and said, That might be the most mature apology I have ever received. My dad taught me, Lily said. He says you can be angry and still be kind about it. It just takes more work. He's right, Claire said. He usually is. Don't tell him that, Lily said. He's already pretty confident. This time, Claire did laugh a real laugh, the kind that arrived without permission. The afternoon resettled. Not back to what it had been before, forward into something different, something that had been tested and was still standing. Lily went back to the studio. Claire finished her tea. Jack came into the kitchen and stood across from Claire, and they looked at each other with the particular exhausted, grateful look of two people who have just survived something together and are taking stock of the fact that they both made it. She's extraordinary, Claire said, for the second time. But this time it meant something additional, something harder won. She keeps being right, Jack said, about everything. It's incredibly inconvenient. Claire looked at him. She said she's not mad at me. I know. I wasn't expecting that. Lily doesn't hold things past the point of usefulness, Jack said. She got that from somewhere that wasn't me. A pause. Then Claire said, What happens now with Cole, with the documents? Jack had thought about this during the 7 minutes in the kitchen. He'd thought about it clearly without the anger making the thinking crooked, which was how he knew the 9 days of Careful had actually done something. It had given him enough distance to think straight. We filed the complaint with the state bar, he said. Claire's attorney thinks we have enough for a formal misconduct investigation. Not a lawsuit that's expensive and long, and Lily ends up in the middle of it. A bar complaint is different. It's on record. Cole's firm gets examined. The misconduct becomes part of the official history of his practice. And Daniel's estate, Claire said. His family. Not worth it, Jack said. Daniel's dead. His family didn't make the calls, Cole did. Going after them means Lily spends 2 years hearing her story in a deposition context, and I won't do that to her. Claire nodded slowly. And Rachel's name? I'm going to write a letter, Jack said. To Martha, for the record, explaining what we found, that Rachel tried, that she was stopped, that the story of her leaving was a story someone else wrote. He paused. And then I'm going to read that letter to Lily, so she has it. So when she's older and needs to know the full shape of it, she has it in writing. Claire looked at him for a long moment. That's the right thing? She said. Yeah, he said. I'm trying to get better at doing those in order. Something passed through her expression, something warm and a little undone. Jack, she said. Don't, he said gently. An echo. She blinked. You're using my line. Seemed applicable. She almost smiled. Then she said quietly, I'm selling the house. He went still. What? I've been thinking about it for 3 weeks, she said. Since Lily said it felt like a museum, since I started painting again and realized that the reason I stopped wasn't Daniel dying, it was that this house still runs on the architecture of his control, the layout, the rooms, the locked doors. She looked at him steadily. I can't paint freely in a house I'm still arranging myself inside of. Jack said nothing for a moment. Where would you go? I don't know yet, she said. Somewhere with northern light and less square footage and maybe a porch. She paused. Somewhere that needs building instead of managing. He looked at her. That's a big decision. I know. You're sure? I've been sure for 3 weeks, she said. I was just waiting to say it out loud to someone who wouldn't try to talk me out of it for the wrong reasons. He thought about the chandelier, about the locked studio, about a woman sitting alone for 2 hours and 40 minutes under a fixture held by 2 failing wires, calculating whether it would come down, and deciding to stay anyway. Because staying was what she did in this house, out of habit, out of history, out of the particular paralysis that set in when you'd been managed so long, you forgot what it felt like to choose. Okay, he said. Okay, she said. It's your house, he said. It's your life. I'm not going to tell you what to do with either. Something shifted in her face. Something that had been braced for pushback for the management for the reasonable counter-argument relaxed. Thank you, she said, simply. Lily appeared in the kitchen doorway with paint on her left hand and an expression of mild crisis. The yellow isn't working, she said. I know what I want, but I can't make the color. Claire turned immediately. Show me. They went to the studio. Claire and Lily and Jack followed, because there was nowhere else he wanted to be. He stood in the doorway while Claire stood at Lily's canvas and looked at what she was trying to do, and then mixed colors on a small palette, with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd spent 20 years learning exactly this, and held it out to Lily. Lily took the brush. She looked at the color. She looked at her canvas, the 3 figures in the blue-gray rain, the shadow that was Rachel, the painting she'd given to Claire, and that now hung on the studio wall, and she painted a wash of warm yellow around the edges, not covering the rain, not replacing the gray, just surrounding it, holding it. She stepped back and looked at it. That's it, she said. That's what I wanted. What is it? Claire asked. Lily tilted her head. The part that comes after, she said. When the rain is still there but something warm is around it, so it's not just cold. Jack looked at the painting, at the yellow around the edges of the gray, at the shadow that was Rachel still present, still incomplete, held inside warmth. She never got to feel while she was alive. He looked at Claire. Claire looked at him. Lily looked at both of them with the particular patience of someone who has been right about something for a while and is waiting for the adults to catch up. It's good, Lily said. Right. Yeah, bug, Jack said. His voice came out a little uneven. He didn't try to fix that. It's really good. Lily handed the brush back to Claire and wiped her hand on her jeans. A thing Jack would normally address and didn't, and said, Can we have dinner here? I want to tell Claire about the fractions thing. What fractions thing? Claire said. It's about how grief works, Lily said, walking toward the kitchen. My dad explained it and I made it better. Claire looked at Jack. Jack shrugged. She made it better, he said. They had dinner again. Lily explained the fractions theory with complete seriousness, drawing a diagram on a paper napkin, and Claire listened with the focused attention she brought to everything that mattered, and asked 3 follow-up questions. And Lily answered them with the satisfaction of someone whose intellectual work was being taken seriously. Jack sat at the table and watched it and thought, I walked into this house with a bag of tools and $28, and I thought I was here to fix a light. He thought about the chandelier, about the moment it blazed back on bright and steady and restored while everything else in the house stayed dark. He thought the light was never the thing that needed fixing. After dinner, after Lily was asleep on the couch for the second time in Claire's house, Jack sat across from Claire and said, I want to say something, and I need you to not use my line on me. Claire's mouth curved slightly. Okay. I fell in love with you somewhere between the chandelier and the sandwich, he said. I know the timing is complicated. I know there's still the bar complaint, and the letter to Martha, and selling a house, and a 7-year-old who has opinions about everything, and a stuffed rabbit who now has official residency. I know all of that. He looked at her directly. I just didn't want it to be something I only said in a parking lot in my head. Claire was quiet for a moment. Then she said, the sandwich was Tuesday. That was very fast. The chandelier then? That was midnight on a Tuesday. I know, he said. I work fast. She looked at him. And the last piece of it, the last carefully maintained, expertly constructed piece of the composure that had taken 12 years to build and 7 weeks to begin dismantling came down entirely. I love you too, she said. I have for a while. I was waiting until it felt safe to say. Does it feel safe now? She thought about it honestly. No, she said. But I'm done waiting for safe. Safe was what I called things when I was too afraid to move. Jack reached across the table and took her hand. Her hands were warm and completely still. Lily stirred on the couch, shifted, resettled, didn't wake. They sat like that, Jack's hand over Claire's. Lily asleep nearby the painting on the studio wall with its yellow edges holding the gray, and the house for the first time in longer than Claire could accurately measure did not feel like a museum. It felt tentatively and impermanently, and more honestly than anything had felt in years, like somewhere people actually lived. The house sold in 11 days. Claire had expected it to take longer, had prepared herself for the particular drawn-out discomfort of strangers walking through rooms she'd lived inside for 12 years, opening closets, commenting on square footage, reducing everything to a number. But the first couple who came through made an offer the same afternoon, and the offer was fair, and Claire signed the papers at the kitchen table where she'd had coffee with Jack for the first time, and felt in that signing not loss, but the specific relief of a door closing cleanly behind you. She told Jack on the phone that evening. He was quiet for a second, then said, How do you feel? Like I took a breath I've been holding for 12 years, she said. Good, he said. That's the right feeling. Lily's response when told the next day was more practical. Where are all your paintings going? She asked. Storage for now, Claire said, until I find somewhere with the right light. Lily considered this. The making room needs north light, she said. My teacher says that's the best kind. It doesn't move around, it's honest. Claire looked at her. Your teacher is right. Most things need honest light, Lily said, and went back to her book. Jack and Claire found the house in Oak Park 3 weeks later. It was not large. It had a porch that needed repainting, a backyard that needed attention, and a room on the second floor with north-facing windows and walls that were still the previous owner's idea of a good color, which they were not. It needed work, real work, the structural kind. And when Jack walked through it with the eye of someone who understood load-bearing walls and compromised circuits and the specific vocabulary of old houses that had been loved imperfectly, he said, The bones are good. What does that mean in actual language? Claire said. It means everything wrong with it is fixable, he said. She looked at him. I know the feeling, she said. They stood in the north-facing room. Empty bad paint, honest light coming through the windows exactly the way Lily's teacher had described, and Claire put her hand flat against the wall and was quiet for a moment. "This is it," she said. "Yeah," Jack said. "I think so too." They didn't move in together. Not immediately, not all at once. That wasn't how either of them did things. Claire rented a small apartment in Oak Park while the house went through closing and inspection, and the particular bureaucratic patience of real estate. Jack stayed in his apartment with Lily, but the house was theirs, in the way that things become yours before the paperwork is finished. They spent weekends there, the three of them working through what needed doing. Jack rewired the east side completely. Lily painted the bad color room with Claire, while Jack worked both of them covered in a warm white that Lily had selected after serious deliberation at the hardware store. "Not too yellow," Lily had said, holding up samples. "Yellow is too loud for a making room, but not just white either. Something in between." "Warm white," Claire said. "Yeah, like the light looks when it's coming through right." They painted on a Saturday in early spring. Jack could hear them from the hallway. Lily narrating, Claire responding the occasional disagreement about technique, and it sounded like the specific music of people who had decided without announcement to belong to each other. He sat in the hallway outside the making room and listened and thought, "This is the thing I didn't know I was driving toward when I started the truck that night in the rain." The bar complaint against Gareth Cole was filed on a Thursday. Claire's attorney submitted the documentation. The memo, the intercepted letter records the timeline, and the state bar acknowledged receipt and opened a preliminary review. It was not dramatic. It did not feel like justice in the movie sense of the word. It felt like a fact being entered into a record that couldn't be erased, which was its own kind of permanence. Jack wrote the letter to Martha Collins the same week. He sat at his kitchen table at 11 o'clock at night and wrote it by hand, because some things needed to be written by hand, and he told her everything what they'd found, what it meant that Rachel had tried twice and been stopped both times, that the absence wasn't a choice so much as a door that kept closing before she could get through it. He told her that Lily knew, that Lily had a painting with a shadow figure that was Rachel surrounded by yellow, and that Lily had explained it as the part that comes after when the rain is still there, but something warm is around it. He wrote, "I don't know if this helps, but Rachel deserved to have someone say it clearly and on paper. She tried. She was stopped. She kept a picture on her nightstand every night for 7 years. That's the true story. I want someone in her life to have it." Martha called 2 days after the letter arrived. She cried. Not loudly, the quiet, private kind of crying that comes from a grief that's been carried a long time and has just been given somewhere to set down. She said, she would have been so glad. About Lily. About all of it. "I know," Jack said. "She talked about her," Martha said. "In the last year especially. She talked about her like she was already proud of who Lily was becoming, even not knowing." He had to stop for a moment after that. He thanked Martha. He ended the call and sat very still in his kitchen and let that sentence exist in the room without trying to do anything with it. She was already proud of who Lily was becoming. He told Lily that part. Not all of it, just that part, that sentence, because it was the part that belonged to Lily specifically. He told her on a Sunday morning over breakfast, casually, the way you deliver something important to a child without ceremony, without build-up in the middle of ordinary life, so the ordinary life can hold it. Lily stopped eating. "She said that," Lily said. Martha did, about what Rachel told her. Lily looked at her plate. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she picked up her fork and went back to eating and said to her eggs, "Good, she should have been." Jack looked at his daughter, at the complete, uncomplicated dignity of that response. "Yeah," he said. "She should have been." 2 months after the bar complaint was filed, Gareth Cole's firm received a formal notice of misconduct investigation covering 3 separate client matters. Rachel's case was one, but not the only one, because when attorneys manage people the way Cole had, Rachel was rarely the only one. The investigation was ongoing. It was not Jack's to track anymore. He'd handed it to the Record and let the Record do what records do. What mattered, what Jack came back to in the quiet moments, was Lily. Always Lily. The fact that she had stopped waking up in the night to check. The fact that she had started gradually naturally calling Claire by her name without the slight hesitation that had been there in the beginning. The fact that one morning Jack had overheard Lily on the phone with her school friend Destiny saying, "I can't on Sunday, we're painting at the new house." We, without thinking, without deciding, and had stood in the hallway for a moment just holding that word, we. The art day was Claire's idea. She brought it up on a Wednesday evening when the three of them were eating at the kitchen table in Jack's apartment. She'd started coming for dinner on Wednesdays, and nobody had formally arranged it. It had just calcified into the schedule, the way things do when they're right. And she said, "I want to do something with the making room, not just for us, something outward." "Like what?" Jack said. "An art day," she said, "for kids. Single-parent families foster kids who don't have access to art programs because those get cut first." She looked at her plate. "I have the space. I have the supplies. I have—" A pause. "I have more than I've ever been able to use in one lifetime. And I've been sitting inside it." Lily put her fork down. "Can I help? It was partly your idea," Claire said. "You said my studio had too much of my sadness and not enough of other people's. I've been thinking about that ever since." Lily looked satisfied in the way she looked when an idea she'd had was being taken seriously by adults. "We need to make sure there's enough blue," she said. "Blue is the most important. Everyone needs blue eventually." "I'll order extra blue," Claire said. "And the making room sign," Lily said. "It should say making room, not studio, not art room, making room." "Agreed," Claire said. Jack looked at the two of them negotiating the logistics of a thing that 3 months ago neither of them could have imagined. In an apartment that had felt for 7 years like a place he was managing rather than living. And he thought this is what it looks like when a family builds itself from the outside in. The art day happened on a Saturday in late April. Claire organized it through 2 community centers, one in Oak Park, one on the west side, and sent the invitations through the school social workers because social workers knew which children needed this without being asked. 11 kids came, ages 6 to 12. 4 had one parent. 3 were in foster placements. 2 had lost a parent in the past year. All of them arrived at the house in Oak Park with the particular combination of wariness and hunger that children carry when they've been offered something good and aren't sure yet if it's real. Lily met them at the door. Not Jack. Not Claire. Lily because it had been her suggestion, because she'd said, "Kids trust kids faster. Let me be the one they see first." And she was right, as she generally was. She stood at the door in her paint-stained jeans and said, "Hi, I'm Lily. The making room is upstairs. There's blue. Come in." And they came in. Jack spent the morning fixing a section of the porch railing that had been on his list for 2 weeks, partly because it needed doing, and partly because from the porch he could hear the making room through the open window, above the sound of 11 children painting, talking the occasional burst of laughter. Claire's voice steady and encouraging and warm, in the way that it had become over months the way a thing becomes when it stops performing and starts simply being. At one point, he heard a small voice, one of the younger ones. 6 or 7 asked Claire, "Is this your house?" "Yes," Claire said. "It's nice," the child said. "It doesn't feel like a museum." Jack put down his tools. He stood on the porch and listened. "That's the nicest thing anyone said about it," Claire said. "Museums are boring," the child said. "This smells like paint, and it's good." "That's exactly what it's supposed to smell like," Claire said. At noon, Lily came down and found Jack on the porch and said, "There's a girl up there. Her name is Sophia. She's 8. She's been in 3 foster homes." She said it the way she said things that mattered simply without dramatization, so the weight of it came through clean. "She keeps painting over what she does, like she doesn't think it's allowed to stay." Jack looked at his daughter. "What did you tell her?" "I told her about the fractions," Lily said. "And then I told her that everything in the making room gets to stay. That's the rule. You don't have to paint over here." She paused. "She's still there. She's painting a house." "Good," Jack said. "Yeah," Lily said, and went back upstairs. The afternoon stretched, and the children stayed longer than the 2 hours the invitation had suggested, which Claire took as the best possible outcome, and at 3 o'clock, Lily appeared in the doorway of the making room, with her painting. The one with the blue-gray rain and the shadow and the yellow edges. And she carried it to where the kids' work was hung on a temporary line across one wall, and she hung it next to Sophia's house, and she said, "This one's mine. You can look at it." Sophia looked at it for a long time. "What's the yellow?" Sophia asked. Lily looked at her. "The part that comes after people stop leaving," she said. Sophia looked at the painting. She looked at her own painting. The house tentative, slightly unfinished, and she looked at the yellow on Lily's canvas. Then she picked up her brush, and she put yellow around the edges of her house, not covering, not replacing, just surrounding it, holding it. The making room went quiet for a moment, the particular quiet of a room where something true has just happened, and everyone present can feel it, even if they can't name it. Claire looked at Jack in the doorway. Jack looked at Claire. Nobody said anything. Nobody needed to. The children went home at 4. Parents, caseworkers, a foster mother who shook Claire's hand and said, "When's the next one?" Claire said the first Saturday of next month, and the woman said, "Good, I'll spread the word," and she left. The house emptied out slowly. Jack cleaned up the porch. Claire and Lily washed brushes in the making room sink, a task that required organization, and that Lily had very specific opinions about. And by 5 o'clock the house was quiet again. The good kind of quiet, the earned kind, the kind that came after something real had happened inside it. Lily came downstairs with her hands clean and Rabbit under her arm and stood in the hallway and looked at Jack. "Dad," she said. "Yeah, I think this is home," she said. Not a question. He looked at her. "Yeah, Bug, I think so too." Claire appeared at the top of the stairs. She looked down at both of them. Something moved through her face, the full, unguarded version of the expression he'd been watching emerge for months, the one that existed beneath all the composed, careful architecture she'd built to survive. "The railing on the second step is loose," she said. "I know," Jack said. "I'll fix it." "I know you will," she said. She came downstairs. She stood next to Jack in the hallway, and Lily stood in front of them, both holding Rabbit, and looked up with the direct dark eyes that had never once been fooled by anything soft or managed. "Are you my real family now?" Lily asked. She looked at Claire specifically when she said it, the way she had a habit of asking the hard thing to the person who needed to hear it most. Claire didn't hesitate. She didn't manage. It didn't soften. It didn't give Lily a careful installment of the truth. She crouched down to Lily's level, and she said, "Only if you want me to be." Lily looked at her for a long moment. The kind of look that was the last check, the final verification of something a person had been deciding for a long time. "I already decided," Lily said. "I was just waiting for you grown-ups to catch up." Claire's composure came down completely. Not dramatically quietly, finally, the way things come down when they no longer need to be held. She pulled Lily in, and Lily let her, which was the whole answer, and Jack put his hand on Claire's back, and the three of them stood in the hallway of the house in Oak Park, that smelled like paint and new wood and the specific warmth of a place where someone had decided to stop leaving. Later, after Lily was in bed in her room, the one she'd picked because it was small and had a window seat, and she'd said, "I can read here and see outside at the same time," this is the one Jack and Claire sat on the porch in the dark, not talking, just sitting. The porch railing still needed work on one section, and the yard was not finished, and there were rooms in the house that were half done, and would stay that way for a while, because real things always took longer than you planned, and needed more patience than you thought you had. But the light was on inside. Lily's light through the window of her room, and the making room window above which Claire had left open so the paint smell could clear, and the chandelier in the foyer, the one Jack had installed last weekend, simple and warm, nothing like the 200-pound fixture in the Kenilworth mansion, was on too. Burning steady, burning the way things burn when they've been properly wired, properly supported, properly maintained by someone who understood the weight. Jack took Claire's hand. She leaned into his shoulder. The porch held them both. Some families were born in hospitals. Some were signed on paper. Some were built slowly in kitchens and broken apartments and studio floors and hallways, where adults sat down on the ground because the ground was the right level. Some were built in making rooms in paint-stained afternoons, in the moment when a child handed a brush to a woman who had forgotten she was allowed to make things and said, "You can have some of mine." Some families were assembled from pieces that had been through fire and sat with the missing instead of erasing it, and learned in the specific difficult work of staying that the yellow at the edges wasn't a cover. It was a choice. And Lily Miller, who had been carrying the weight of an absence since before she could name it, who had translated grief into fractions and painted shadows into something witnessed, who had sat on studio floors and said true things to broken adults and waited with the patience of someone who understood that the right people would eventually catch up, had made that choice first. She had decided. She had been waiting for the grown-ups, and now in the warm light of a house that smelled like paint and staying, they had finally completely arrived.